Hello, thank you very much for inviting me today. I just want to check that you don't have any echo. Are we okay? Okay, I'll start unless someone tells me. So thank you again for the invitation. I'm very sorry for not being in person today. I am Leanda Barrington-Leach from the Five Rights Foundation. We are an NGO with the mission to build the digital world that children and young people deserve. As an organization, we work closely with kids, we do research, we work with IT practitioners, and we provide expert support to policymakers around the world. Our work is global. And I am based in Brussels. It gathers around three goals. The first goal is the normative task of ensuring that children's rights are fully recognized across digital policy and law. We worked closely with the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child for over 3 years to support the drafting and child consultation of the General Comment number 25, which sets out precisely and quite prescriptively how children's rights apply and need to be upheld by states. Now we're working to ensure it is transposed and permeates regional and national law and policies. We have also developed a practical toolkit for policymakers to implement child rights in the digital environment. So while there may be many gaps, there are no excuses for not filling them. Our second goal is to ensure the concrete enforcement of children's rights through data protection law. 2 years ago, Five Rights founder and chair Baroness Biben Kidron introduced the Age-Appropriate Design Code into law in the UK. This is the first enforceable legal code for children's rights in this space. The Age-Appropriate Design Code is grounded in European data protection law, the GDPR, and has inspired similar initiatives already in Ireland, France, the Netherlands, and Sweden. 2 weeks ago, a Californian Age-Appropriate Design Code, modelled on the UK law, was signed into law after getting through each and every stage of the legislative process without a single vote against, and this in the home of Silicon Valley. The code has now been in force in the UK for over a year, and it has driven the biggest wave of change in the design of digital products and services since GDPR itself. It's now enforceable on both sides of the Atlantic, notably covering both Silicon Valley and the Dublin European headquarters of big tech. Our third goal is to build a consistent and comprehensive safety by design framework that ensures all digital products and services likely to be accessed by children are designed with their rights and best interests in mind from the get-go. This is nothing radical. In fact, it is simply applying product safety law to digital products, which are a growing proportion of all products. Product safety provides a solid and proportional framework for both innovation and regulatory oversight. If your product falls into a high-risk category, it must be certified before being marketed. If not, the producers just need to be able to show that they conformed with any existing standards if they are asked by the regulator. We worked with the IEEE, that's the Institute for Electronic and Electrical Engineers, to develop a technical standard on age-appropriate design. This standard has now been made available free of charge to companies. It can also be the basis for a European standard to underpin, among others, the Digital Services Act, the AI Act, the new proposal for a regulation on preventing child sexual abuse, and the reviewed General Product Safety Regulation. Based on this standard, we will also shortly publish a code of practice for safety by design to guide policymakers and regulators in their implementation of existing commitments, not least for the digital service coordinators, the Digital Services Act. So once again, for both companies and regulators, if there are gaps, there are no excuses not to fill them. I will come back to the fundamental principles underpinning this work, but first I'd like to share a few facts and figures to highlight the nature of the risks that children are facing. So consider addiction. 4 in 10 children say they rarely disconnect from social media, and various studies find between a third and half of kids worry themselves that they are addicted to the internet. Consider commercial exploitation. Many online games are deliberately designed to extract as much money as possible from players. Essential aspects of the game, such as energy and experience, appear as resources that deplete before the player's eyes, with the option to pay to improve gameplay. 80% of apps marketed as suitable for 5-year-olds contain in-app purchases. 15% of kids have stolen money to pay for loot boxes. Consider gender stereotypes and violence. 10% of 12 to 13-year-olds say they are addicted to porn. 80% of girls say it is common to be put under pressure to provide sexual images of themselves. Consider child sexual abuse. The fastest growing category of child sexual abuse material is self-generated and involving 7 to 10-year-olds. So please also consider, most importantly, the vicious circle this is creating. 80% of consumers of child sexual abuse material on the dark web say they first accessed this material when they were children themselves. 40% were under the age of 13. More than half say they stumbled across it accidentally. Somehow it was served up to them. The same vicious circle is evident for growing online gender-based violence. So where's the problem? We humans are far from perfect. People put a lot of nasty stuff out there, and some do some really bad things. Kids themselves are also busy exploring. They're testing the limits. However, the way popular digital products and services are designed pushes the risks far beyond the reasonable. It gives a platform to the worst of human nature and exploits our vulnerabilities. Those who suffer the most are children. The data economy is an attention economy. It intentionally uses persuasive design to get and keep users online, engaging, sharing, and creating content. It exploits psychological techniques, grounded, for example, in our survival instinct bias, which leads us to pay more attention to a threat than to good news, or in our nature as social animals motivated by the desire to be liked. This leads to children being systematically exposed to a wide variety of risks. Five Rights Pathways research showed that social media accounts registered as children were all subject to messaging from strangers and illegal or harmful content within hours of being set up. While these accounts were targeted with advertisement for games, sweets, teenage tampons, and such like specifically for kids, they were at the same time also recommended harmful content from sexualized to pro-suicide material by algorithms that weight negative or extreme content 5 times higher than neutral or positive content. At the moment, it is clear that the problem is a feature and not a bug of the system. Thus, the solution must be to act at the level of the system. Our approach is based on a few critical principles. First, the foundation is the rights of the child, which follow the child. This means that any effective action must cover all products and services, big or small, that children are likely to access. We should resist efforts to complicate and divide the issues into boxes labeled, for example, online platforms, gaming, AI, the metaverse, online CSEA, cyberbullying, or disinformation, for example. If we don't deal holistically with the issue, then the house always wins, so to speak. In the end, there are more loopholes than netting, and enforcement is weak. Secondly, the solution must be delivered upstream by integrating children's rights by design and default. You can't systematically recommend children's profiles to strangers, make visible their location, nudge them to respond to a direct message or to try out live stream, and then think if you have a line in the terms and conditions and a report button somewhere, everything's fine and dandy. No, it's not. It has to be about due diligence, doing your homework in advance, and mitigating risk and harm. It also can't be about shutting children out from spaces where they have a right to be. And it can't be all about digital literacy or parental controls. We should not ask children or parents or teachers to hold the responsibility for badly designed systems. This sector is 25% of world GDP, but still there is an idea that children should be resilient or responsible for navigating its pollution. For absolute clarity, of course, children should be digitally literate, but that is not instead of creating a digital world that has already been designed with them in mind. This approach of privacy and safety by design and default, it will not and is not designed to make the digital world 100% safe. A child can still access loads of things, but companies cannot then abuse it. For example, a child may come across self-harm, but a company can no longer use that browsing history to recommend more self-harm material. That is unacceptable. Thirdly, the approach must be tech neutral and outcome-based. Companies must be encouraged and incentivized to do what they do best, innovate to the desired outcome, which in this case puts the best interests of the child before profits. So to bring their services into scope with the age-appropriate design code, companies took different measures. For example, Instagram banned adults from messaging children and introduced prompts encouraging children to take breaks from scrolling their feeds. Google made Safe Search the default browsing mode for children and turned off autoplay on YouTube. And TikTok made under 16s accounts private by default. The tech-neutral and outcomes-based approach, as opposed to approaches which seek to focus on certain types of systems or to ban certain features or impose others, for example, this approach sets a bar and allows companies freedom to deliver. It allows for proportionality, it is future-proof, and avoids gaps and loopholes. Fourth, focusing on outcomes also means focusing on driving positive change rather than looking back and seeking to punish. The aim is a better system for children, not specifically settlements out of court to those who sue. This upstream and spot-checking approach is comparatively low red tape for companies and low regulatory burden for the regulator. The incentive for positive innovation has also meant that the changes companies have made to comply with the age-appropriate design code are now some of their top PR selling points. So in conclusion, I would say that we're now at a moment of great opportunity, but we are also at a moment of great risk. Lawmakers and regulators around the world want to see change, but they also risk taking divergent approaches to a global problem. If they do so, it could slow down or even undermine the whole effort. Different standards around the world could create regulation loopholes that tech firms will exploit. And those that want to comply will find it much harder to do so if they face a highly complex regulatory environment around the world. The approach of safety and privacy for children by design and default is now mirrored in law on both sides of the Atlantic. We now have the opportunity for a new global standard, and honestly, we can't afford to mess it up. Thank you.
Linda, thank you very much for your speech. Dziękuję bardzo wszystkim naszym prelegentom.
Thank you so much.